Hej och välkomna tillbaka till Erik Pensedag och vår healthcare-dag 24 februari. Jag heter Claus Olesen och är analytiker på banken. Vi ska gå vidare i dagens agenda. Nästa bolag att presentera är Initiator Pharma och här för att presentera bolaget har vi vd Claus Olesen. Very welcome, Claus.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. And thank you for the introduction. So the usual disclaimer here to start with. So looking at Initiator Pharma, we are dedicated to deliver, returns and shareholder value by, advancing therapeutics in indications where there is an unmet medical need. Right now, we are having 3 clinical programs in development, and we actually only so far spent about 100 million Swedish to take these projects to the state where we are today. So we actually have done this in a very cost-efficient manner. And, it's a very unique position for such a small company as us to have 3 ongoing clinical programs. We are founded by a team of skilled entrepreneurs with a broad background in both the early stage of the R&D, through the development, and all the way to the marketing of the products. And how do we envision doing this? Well, one of the ways we're doing it is we're advancing, as I said, a very advanced clinical stage pipeline. Here in gray, in the top 3 programs, I have what we have in the clinic. We have in organic erectile dysfunction. We have a phase 2B project ongoing. We also have the IP 2018, where we have a psychogenic erectile dysfunction project ongoing. And then the most recent project that we added to the pipeline, and we started this healthy pain challenge study in January, and that's in a phase 1 setting. And I'll get back to these programs more. We also have additional assets in the pipeline. 2 of the assets that we are working with is IP-DP 2015 and IP-NP 2015. And at this stage, they're currently being tested with NIDA. It is the National Institute of Drug Abuse in the US. They have a program where they have taken in these compounds and they're checking them to be used in the treatment of addiction, for example, like methamphetamine. So this is something that we are looking at. Okay, so there was a sound apparently here. So this is one of the things that we are looking at. We're seeing we can advance these discovery assets with the support of NIDA, and we're looking very much forward to see these results coming up later. So we have a proprietary clinical stage pipeline that we are advancing in multiple unmet need indications. Just in general and brief about Initiator Pharma, we are a Danish company listed on First North here in Stockholm. We used to be on Spotlight, but shifted last year. And at the time of the shift, we also had new investors joining us. We had Link AB joining us and Adrigo, and they are now, cornerstone investors in our efforts going forward. At that time, we also initiated the new program in neuropathic pain that I'll get back to later. We have a cash that is bringing us well into 23, and all the clinical trials that have presented so far are fully financed with this. We have about 4,000 shareholders split out between Denmark, Sweden, and other countries as well. And as you see, we have raised about 131 million Swedish, 10 million in soft funding, and we have made a deal with MAC, which is the clinical provider of the clinical trials that we do, that they also invested 23 million Swedish crowns. So I spoke a little bit about the experienced management team behind the company. And what you see here is I just kind of listed a few of the people. I'm not going to go through them all, but under the board, we have a diverse group of people, both with a finance background in listed and unlisted companies, and also very much in medical doctor and Magnus Persson, who's actually been advancing multiple assets, both from the early stage in phase 1 and phase 2, and all the way to marketing. On the management team, in the team, you can say that besides myself, Michael Thompson plays a really important role. He has more than 30 years of experience in clinical development, taking things, from the early stage, from R&D, going into doing phase 1, phase 2 proof of concept studies, and so forth. He has a background with Novo Nordisk, Novartis, where he was the global head of clinical pharmacology. The most recent addition to our team is actually Christina Guldberg, who is going to start working for us from March 1st. And she comes from a background where she's been working a lot with orphan drug indications. So she has a great deal of knowledge working with orphan drug indications. And this is actually what we bring in to strengthen our neuropathic pain effort. So we are looking forward to welcome her in the team as well. So why is this modulation of monoamines relevant for Initiator Pharma? And for patients. So again, all the programs that we had are focused on, at this stage, on modulating monoamines. And what is monoamines? Well, monoamines, you can say, is a signal molecule that is used in the brains by the mononergic system. And we probably know them already by name. They're called serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. And these are signal molecules that play a really important role in the many, many processes, such as mood, arousal, sexual functions, some specific types of memory. So they play a really important role. They don't just have one function. It's a balance. It's a continuous balance between how much do you have of one monoamine level and how much do you have another to actually have the right effect. So too much of one thing is a negative thing. And this is actually a truly validated technology. We have been targeting monoamines for many, many years, and they're actually used active in the treatment of depression and also in pain in general. However, a lot of the medications on the market today have issues because, as I just said, if you have too much, for example, of serotonin, what do you increase when you're depressed? You increase the serotonin level to get away with the depression. You actually end up in a situation where you have a sexual dysfunction. Up to 68% of all patients taking antidepressants actually have sexual dysfunctions. So what is it that we are advancing? We are advancing new molecules, the second generation of these modulators with a unique safety profile. So we still can modulate the monoamines to give the desired effect, but we avoid these side effects that we talked about, sexual dysfunction, some of them are toxicity and cardiovascular issues. That we have not seen with the generation that we are working with. And this is very unique and puts us in a very unique position. I said that this is a space that's been around for decades. And of course, can you say, is there still things going on in this space? And last year, actually, IR Lab here from Sweden makes a really interesting deal where they worked on a compound that modulates dopamine with an agonist or a different mechanism than ours. And they actually sold that for $28 million up front with more than $300 million in milestone payments and low double-digit royalties to Ipsen. They will take on the continued development of these assets into the phase 3 and to the later approval and marketing. And this, you can say, similar states that we are coming to now with some of our assets that we have in the pipeline. So again, there is an appetite out there for things that works and also in this space. So from 22, so from this year and the next 18 to 24 months forward, we have a lot of things going on in the company. We're going to have the readout of the pain, this healthy volunteer pain study that I briefly touched upon earlier. So we're going to have that coming out in Q2. We're going to have the readout of our Psychogenic EP 2018 trial. We're going to complete the active dosing of the patients in the organic erectile, the phase 2B trial, and hopefully have the readout just around the year of that. And then we're going to start out on a phase 1, a MAD study with a new drug product. And when I say new drug product, this is actually IP 2015 that we are optimizing into the right tablet or the right capsule that we can give to the patients that we can bring to the market. And then, of course, we'll get the readout from, as I said earlier, from the NIDA collaboration on the other assets. And of course, this opens up for a lot of activities that will keep on delivering many milestones in the 2 years to come. So we are actually, you can say, maximizing shareholders' value in a really, time-efficient manner. We get a lot of things coming up. And we have a very balanced portfolio where we're coming to very clear go, no-go decision points upon the completion of the various trials that we're looking at. So right now we have two initial focus in Initiator Pharma, and I already alluded to them when I presented the pipeline. The first one is that we are looking at erectile dysfunction. This is where we are targeting the patients that do not respond to the current treatment. This is, single dose, on-demand compound, where we actually we can do very simple trials that are very clear endpoints, and it's something we can do and we can very cost effective. We have an ongoing phase 2B, and we are targeting about 30 to 40% of the total ED market with this. So there's a lot of non-responders out there. And it's really to say, when we're talking about who are responders normally, they take Viagra and Cialis and so on, but they do not work in these patients, and that's why there is a need. And then, as mentioned, we added now a severe neuropathic pain program. This is an orphan drug program, and we have chosen the indication called Trigeminal Neuralgia, which is a very devastating neuropathic pain, and I'll get more into details. And again, this is very unique. Here again, we can get orphan drug designation on this compound going into this indication, which will give us some benefits both in the lead time and the development time of this product. And again, we can obtain unique pricing here. But looking at erectile dysfunction, so again, you said there's many patients out there, more than 300 million patients in 2025. We actually estimate that number is, underestimated. We see there are probably a lot more severe having ED problems. And also we see there's an increasing number due to age, lifestyle, and so on. So we see more and more of these patients coming out. And as I said, about 30 to 40% of the patients do not respond. So just to understand, what is it, when we talk about the natural erection response, what is it we are talking about? Well, we're talking about when you see something nice, or you're being touched up, remembering something nice, you actually get a sensation, you get the arousal in your body. This is dopamine talking in your brain. This is dopamine saying that something exciting is going to happen, and then that dopamine is processed down through the spinal cord and leads to a dilation, so an opening up of the arteries leading to the penis, and you get increased blood flow, and then you get the erection. So how does this correlate to what we do? So again, here on the right side, I'm showing a picture. This is a neuron, a monogeneric neuron from the brain. So upon the stimulation, we have the release of dopamine. That's the yellow dot goes into the synaptic cleft, where it binds to receptors that activates the downstream cascade for erection. So again, here, what we do when we release this, it's actually the way it's cleared again, the signal stops, is that it's transported back, and you see that the transporter we are targeting, the dopamine transporter with a red cross across it, is again then, by inhibiting that, we actually increase the concentration of dopamine in the cleft and also the time that it's there. And by doing this, we actually get a much stronger signal. So you can say we amplify the natural erection response. This is a clinical validated strategy. So actually, not only our compound, but other compounds have shown that an increase of dopamine is actually good for sexual function. However, all the other compounds that have been associated with this have severe side effects, and that is why we're advancing our drug where we don't see it. One of the reasons is that you can say our drug is present in the entire brain, but it only works in the area where you have a massive release of dopamine. And in this case, when you punch stimulation, that is what we call the sexual center of the brain, and this is the unique differentiation of our compound. So again, both 2015 and 2018 have this dopamine component that is strengthening the natural erection response. And this is very unique. Then you can say, why do you have two compounds going into the clinic? Well, again, here I would say that we had talked about organic ED and psychogenic ED. Organic ED is what happened to us men when we turned 40 and older. We simply get a physical impairment of delivering sufficient blood to the penile tissue. And this is comes to, if you smoke too much, if you drink too much, there's a lot of things associated with this. So if you have other cardiovascular complications or diabetes, you end up in this group. So then if you look at the other group, the psychogenic ED patients, this could be healthy young men that have plenty of capability of delivering sufficient blood to the penile tissue. However, there's other things that is manipulating them. And that is like depression, for example, taking antidepressants, as I mentioned earlier. So you have a disbalance of the monoamines in the brain, giving this low self-esteem or performance anxiety that is hindering them, from the central nervous system point of view of obtaining an erection. So here again, when you're looking at the 2015, it's mostly focused on the dopamine component, which is strengthening the natural erection response. The 2018 have a good portion of dopamine, but also a little bit of increased levels of serotonin that actually would treat the underlying psychogenic conditioning here. So, looking at the clinical programs that we have ongoing in ID, so we have right now a phase 2B with 120 patients ongoing in organic erectile dysfunction. And here again, it's really important what we do in this study. We actually use the same clinical endpoint that we'll do in a later registration or pivotal phase 3 trial. We're using the EEIF scores. And this is a questionnaire that was also used for the approval of Viagra and Cialis and other products within erectile dysfunction. So here, this is very unique. We have this ongoing, and I'll get back to a little bit of the details in the study in the next slides. This is a study that is partly financed through the agreement we made with MAC more than a year ago, where they actually can convert part of their clinical cost into shares, and they paid a premium of about 70% for those shares when we made the deal. The IP 2018, the psychogenic trial, is a 24-patient study where we include mild depressed patients with erectile dysfunction. And we expect that to read out later this year. In this one, we have a little bit different endpoints. Here we are measuring with Regiscan, so we give them either 1 or 2 doses of our compound and a placebo, so it's a 3-way crossover study. So they see all 3 tests, placebo, high and low level of 2018, and then they experience a visual stimulation by an erotic movie, and we measure with the Regiscan apparatus if they have an erection or not. And we're very much looking forward to complete this study and see the effect. And this is a similar study that we did with the 2015, where we also saw efficacy. So both trials are progressing well, and we are now seeing that COVID is still here, but it's actually loosening up, and we get a really good recruitment rates into these trials. So very excited here. Just getting back to the phase 2B trial. So it's, as I said, 120 patient study. out of 7 sites in mid-England. So we have 3 cohorts here. We have a high dose of IP15, we have a low dose, and then we have a placebo. And again, as I said, the endpoints that I mentioned before are really, really critical here. So very exciting to complete this study. At the end here, the last couple of minutes I'll spend on the new program that we brought in, and that's neuropathic pain. So the IP-TN21 program, which is actually based on the IP-2015 API. So it's the same drug that we're using, but it's have this good abilities both for pain and also for erectile dysfunction. And this is again because we know that monoamines play a really important role in pain, especially in specific types of neuropathic pain. And we have looked through many of the neuropathic pains with an unmet need. And one of the indications that we came across where there's good evidence from earlier studies that modulating dopamine has an effect is trigeminal neuralgia. Trigeminal neuralgia is a very rare disease. It hits the nerve that goes down over your face, the trigeminal nerve, and it's a very extremely painful, sudden electrical light, onset of pain in your face. For some patients, it's maybe 4 or 5 times a day. Other patients, it's all day long. You have pain attacks. We see it more frequent in women above the age of 50 than men. And we also see that, a lot of these, the pain is so severe that it's actually referred to as suicidal pain because, it is so devastating for the patients here. Today, you can say, and when you're looking at the treatments, it's the treatments are following a little bit. What is it from the indication, and what I mean, what is the cause of the root of the pain attack? In some patients, you can see that there's a blood vessel or there is a tumor that is pressing on the trigeminal nerve, and here you can go in and perform a decompression of that area and trying to take away that pressure from the nerve. This is a very invasive procedure, and also about 70% of these actually requires additional treatment. The patients where you cannot see from an MRI scan that there is anything pressing the nerve, there's only one approved therapy, and that's carbamazepine, an old anticonvulsant with a long list of side effects, and actually also with limited efficacy. In some patients, there is efficacy, but it wears off over time, so there's definitely a need for new and improved therapies here. And we can also see that about 76% of all the patients here taking, for example, carbamazepine are actually referring and going back and taking more than one painkiller to survive during the day. So what we are doing here, again, we're doing an accelerated development here again, and we do it in a very stepwise de-risk manner. So right now we have an ongoing, they are called the proof of principle in pain. I'll show you in the next slide what I mean here. And then upon completion of that, we'll use the data from that study to design how is the study going to look in trigeminal neuralgia patients. Right now we are working with the idea to do a study with 20 patients where we do a crossover 2 weeks on either active or placebo, or washout, and 2 weeks on either active and placebo. And in 20 patients, to lower the variance with the patients, we'll do the crossover. And we need to discuss this with the authorities and the patient organizations to make sure that this is aligning with what we can do. And from there on, you could actually go directly into a phase 2-3 pivotal registration trial. It only requires 80 to 180 patients because it is an orphan drug indication, so you don't need a whole lot of patients here. So right now, on the next slide, I'll just go in and look at what is it actually I do when we look at the IP-TN21 program. So right now, we are running a healthy volunteer pain study. So what we do here is actually we induce pain in these healthy men that comes into the clinic by injecting capsaicin, which is the actual part of chili, into the skin. And then we run the whole test battery of tests on them, trying to find out how do they feel the pain? How long do they feel it? And what kind of pain experience do they get? And all of the subjects that we bring in, they get 4 treatments. They get 1 with placebo, they get 2 with our compound, so the IP-2015 at a high and a low dose, and they also, in the 4th group, where they will also experience pregabalin, which is an approved neuropathic pain drug for some indication, not effective in trigeminal neuralgia, as a benchmark, so we can see how we're going to use this going forward. And this is really, really key, because this is a study that all pharma companies are using in pain, and exactly this is why we're going to do it. We want to benchmark our compound against others and see how it works going forward. This will give us, again, as I said, data to design what are we going to do in the TN trial subsequent to this. First dosing took place in January, and we expect to have the data in Q2. So last slide, why invest in Initiator Pharma? We have multiple value inflection points upcoming from our clinical programs. We are working with safe drugs in clinical validated pathways. We have an experienced team, and we have financing in place for the programs that we're showing here. We have a very attractive risk-reward profile. Again, as I said, the targets are validated. We know what the side effects are. Clinical proof of concept have been established. It's short trials with modest investment. And also, you can see the endpoints that we're looking at, both for pain and for erectile dysfunction, are truly validated by the regulatory authorities. So we don't need to invent anything new here, and we can see the readout fairly fast after dosing for the first time in a patient. With that, I would like to say thank you and open the question for
great. Thank you so much for the presentation, Claus. Very interesting, as always. I would like to just start off with a question about you are running all your trials, I guess, in UK. Yeah. And has it been problematic during the winter season, and do you see things to clear up now?
Yeah, so we can say that depending on which of the program, there have been challenges. We know that the 2018 program, which are targeting patients that are suffering from depression as well, during the COVID, when it was closed down in England, they were not able to go and see the therapist, which they normally do. So often, instead of going to the therapist, the GPs prescribed them more, the antidepressant. Yeah. And then they actually were overdosed, you can say, to be included in ours. But we continued recruiting patients in, but at a lot more lower rate. Now we see that the society is opening up again, so we're getting a lot more recruitment in. For the pain study, I would say we are almost back on full track with before the COVID of recruiting healthy volunteers in. But knock on wood, you never know what's going to happen. So. But it's looking much better than it did a year ago, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned also the development of, I guess, a tablet formulation of IP 2015. Could you say something further about that? And also if you do need to do some clinical sort of bridging trial before you could put it into clinical development?
Yeah. So one of the reasons that actually there's multiple reasons for doing it. One of the reasons for making a tablet is that we don't have a tablet at this time. We do what we call drug in a bottle. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we've done that is because it's very cost efficient and we can easily change the dose, so we don't need to make a new tablet. We just add more powder to the bottle when we use it. Of course, this is not usable for people going home. So one of the things that we are trying to do with the capsule is also to find the right profile. That's why we're using different dose levels in the trials we have now, is trying to find out how much compound do we actually need to have on board, and do we need to work on the PK properties? Do we need to have it longer in the system to get a better effect? You can say that on ED, we are looking at an on-demand. You take the tablet and you expect to be able to get the effect within a couple of hours, whereas the chronic pain, you can say the neuropathic pain, it's a chronic treatment where you need actually to maybe have a different exposure profile. So this is one of the reasons. It will also provide new IP. So you can say the existing IP is running out in 31, but this is actually generating completely new IP that we can file worldwide. So it's strengthening both the IP protection of the company, but also the uniqueness of the compound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as you now have started the phase 2B trial for IP 2015, and you have another clinical trial ongoing in ED. When you're out there talking to the pharma and biotech companies, how interested are they in this indication? Do you feel a great interest? A little bit of a leading question.
Yes, yes. Leading question is always good, and I hope I answer the right way, of course. No, you can say, let's start with the Psychogenic one, which is, you can say, the newest edition. And the reason why we actually started looking at the Psychogenic originally was because when we came out and discussed the organic erectile dysfunction, they said, oh, this is really interesting. Can it also help these unique subgroup of patients? And we said, oh, maybe we need to have a program here as well. So you can say Psychogenic is actually a really important one. We know that 68% of all the, people taking antidepressants don't. So there's a great deal of interest here. We can also see that a couple of years ago, Lundbeck and Takeda actually tried to they got a supplementary NDA in one of their compounds saying this is less bad on sexual dysfunction than one of their antidepressants, Rioxetine. So you can say that there is a good understanding that this is something that's needed. So there is a high demand for this. And also for companies that maybe are a little bit outside the scope of men's health in general, because you can say they're maybe more looking at the depression part of it. On the organic one, there is a great deal of interest. You can say now Viagra and Cialis has been there for many years. I think some of the bigger pharmas, so Eli Lilly and Pfizer, they just made a lot of money on those compounds and they think that they solve everything. But there's a lot of specialty pharmas around men's health that can see that there's an attractiveness in this. And in the pain program, there's a great deal of interest as well.
Mm-hmm. And perhaps you could describe how you work with BD today.
So what we do is of course we have a great deal of network from pharmas that we already have established contact with over the last couple of years. So we keep on providing updates to them, interacting with them. Every time there's a new publication coming out, there was one recently we put on our homepage as well with dopamine shown to be really important in Nature, again showing that there's a good correlation and scientific rationale. So we try to modulate it from two sides, convincing the scientists, but also the commercial people in the company that there is a good need for this compound. So this is the way we do it. We participate in meetings and conferences around the world. Of course, now this will increase again with being able to travel more again. So, but we have been very active on that part. Yeah.
And as turning to IP 2018, we expect data, I guess, in second quarter or something like that, hopefully. My impression is that you're more and more tilting it as a depression drug, and just wonder, in that case, what could be the next clinical way forward if the data looks really promising?
Yeah, I don't want to give the persuasion that we're trying to tilt it too much to the depression drug, but we know there's a lot of patients out there that are having these underlying psychogenic issues that do not get normal treatment. They actually suffice with just having therapy and conversations and living in good, healthy families. So you can say, so they get the support they need. So we are still very much focused on the ED in this patient segment. If you want to go out and look at the antidepressant effect, you need to do a lot longer trials. And of course, this is something that also is, depending on what the readout now of the trial is, of course, that is something maybe you can find a partner who is interested in the depression side, and while we still also look at the ED effect.
Great. And then jumping to IPTN 2021. You also expect data this year. And what could be a no-go decision from that clinical trial? If you could, what would be definitely stopping you from further developing it? Yeah,
so it's when you're running such a trial in pain and healthy volunteers, of course, there's a lot of things that you have to assume. How is the translationability going into to be in the TN setting, the trigeminal neuralgia setting, and you would say that that trial is probably not going to be a yes or no. But of course, if we start looking in the patients, what is the kind of profile we see of relief? What is the duration we see of this? So that is, of course, supporting us going forward. You can say a no-go. We already dosed this compound in the phase 2 trial. So you can say normally you would also look at safety and side effects. But as we have dosed this compound now to many patients, we are not so concerned about the side effects. So you can say, but that's normally what you will see if you start seeing that the patients do not tolerate it in a phase 1 setting.
Exactly.
So we actually see that the data that we're going to get out of this trial is going to be really critical for how are we going to design the TN, but also how we're going to do the final formulation of the product, the 2015 tablet that we are making. Because maybe we see that we need to increase the exposure, and then we can do that with the new formulation before we advance into the MAD study. You asked that earlier, but of course this drug, we need to take it through a compatibility study, and then we need to do it into a MAD study to make sure that it has the same safety profile.
Sounds good. And you also have a collaboration with NIDA. And when should we expect any data out of NIDA, and what could be a clinical way forward? Would this be a program that you would rather see financed from external financer like NIDA, or something that you would pursue by yourself?
Yeah, you can say that NIDA is it's a little bit easier if we just paid for everything, then we could get a specific date. NIDA has a system where you get into a line, and then they prioritize your project every month. They look at, is there something more advanced? And when I say more advanced, do they have drugs that are already in the clinic? They'll always get prioritized over your early R&D compounds that we have. So you can say that, so right now we are looking good. I think that everything is in the system, and I hope we'll get a date within the next couple of months to complete the study so we get the data. But again, if somebody comes with a compound that's in phase 2, then they have an advantage over us. But they pay for everything, so we are not in trouble here with the money that wise. The good thing about NIDA is that if they see efficacy in their models that they're running, they actually have the sufficient funding to support you developing this doing the phase 1 and the phase 2 and so on. So they have multiple projects ongoing, and there's such a need in the US for these therapies to treat addiction. And they actually been giving a lot of money, even under the President Trump. He gave a lot of resources into the NIDA to making sure that they could treat this segment of patients.
If you are willing to say anything about, previous attempts with NIDA from, I guess the originator of your drugs is Neurosearch, and they have been collaborating with NIDA previously, and what has been the challenge from their side, and why you believe you have a better opportunity with your substances?
Yeah, I think that one of the, you can say that the Neurosearch, they actually still think that some of their compounds that they made together with Saniona is actually still being tested in some settings there. I think that what we have learned for that is maybe the type of addiction that we need to go into needs to be something where it's a more homogeneous group, so we can get a faster readout. Okay. I also think what we have learned is that the compound that we again have with the profile that we have seen of 2015 and 2018 are very safe. So the normal side effects that you experience with some of these monoamine modulators, which is increased blood pressure and so on, that we have not seen. So that would actually maybe allow for a faster development time for our compounds. But of course, it's establishing a collaboration with NIDA should not just be a funding, and then it takes too long. We want to make sure we can do it in a compressed way to find out, is this giving a result or not? But we definitely see NIDA could be a good sponsor in this.
Perfect. And my last question, as you mentioned, you have other opportunities to expand your pipeline in the future. And when would be the right time to do such a move?
Yeah, probably the question is, this should have been yesterday, right? The answer. No, I think that what we're very diligent in when we're looking for additional assets, and of course we continue to look when we're out there in these meetings where we meet the big pharma. Other pharmas are also pitching ideas. Projects are being laid off. I think that our business model is taking something that we know that is validated in a target, so the target needs to be known. There needs to be some kind of clinical proof that it's actually something that will work in this indication, like we have both for pain and for erection. And then it also needs to be at fairly advanced stage. We do not want to start developing a small molecule. We want to take something that is phase 2, phase 3 ready even, and then it needs to match something that we have the capabilities to do in the company. So this is the criteria that we're looking at, and we see a lot of exciting things out there, but it also needs to fit into what we are doing, and also to the current pipeline that we have of 3 ongoing clinical programs.
Of course.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Claus.
Yeah, thank you very much for the questions. Appreciate it.